What's up, everybody? It's the Cowboy, J.R. Storm, and my man, J.K. Candell, coming at you with another episode of the J-Rock Show. J.K., my brother, what's good?
Doing great, JR. We got another great conference in store for you, conference analysis in store for the viewers at home today. This time we're talking about the American Conference, starting with the Davidson Wildcats. The Wildcats bring in a strong freshman duo of Bernari James and Nick Hugo. What is the ceiling for this team that is admittedly one of the younger in this conference?
I think the ceiling for this team is definitely, an American Conference championship, and I think they could make things interesting in Hoopsteria. I truly believe that. As of right now, I was about to call them my favorite to win the conference, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. But they're definitely in my top two of teams who I think have the best shot at winning the conference. But I think they can, definitely legitimately do so and, potentially make a run in Hoopsteria. I mean, you get the best recruiting class in program history. I mean, let's call it like it is. Bernari James, Nick Hugo, Tyquan Hartfield Landrum, Yanni Brashear, and also you return one of the more interesting guards, I think, in the country to me, in Jameel Wright-Foreman.
I really like the guard duo of Bernari James and Jameel Wright-Foreman, like you mentioned. But I love the breakout potential of Keontae Doucette, and I really do like Deontay Odom. I think that this team could do some damage this season, but I expect them to be atop the American next season. I think Hoopsteria could be in their future, but it's all about how Bernari James and Nick Hugo adjust to the SimWorld U game, and I think Bernari James will do it seamlessly. I'm a little less bullish on Nick Hugo.
Yeah, I think Nick Hugo, solid, efficient defensively, but he's yet to find that consistent offensive flow within his game. And one area I would say of concern with this Davidson team that comes to mind with me is when they play against a team, with size. Three guys at 6'8", and that's the tallest they have. So I think when they play, if they get matched up with like a Duke, out of conference, or
a Houston in conference. We'll get to that later.
I think that could give them a little bit of trouble, but I think Davidson does have a legitimate shot to win the American Conference. And then moving on to the next school, we've got Harvard.
Jay Ross is a great talent, but they're one of the youngest teams in SimWorld U. They have 6 freshmen coming in. And I like JV Deck, I like Kamarian Haywood, and I like Jay Ross. That's a very strong trio, and I really do like some of the international players they are bringing in. Youngjin Park, Horan Zhu. They have talent on this team, but I think it's going to take them a season to kind of get the ball rolling and show and get that much needed SimWorld U experience. I think next season this team could do legitimate damage in this conference, but this season I think they're really going to be at the cellar.
Yeah, I have Harvard finishing at the bottom of the conference this season, or in that bottom tier conversation. And then next program we wanted to talk about, Houston. Now, Houston, along with Davidson, my clear-cut top two, to win the American Conference. What stands out to you about Kelvin Sampson's team?
It might be the deepest team in SimWorld U. There's a reason they were ranked 3rd in the initial rankings. There's so much talent on the squad from top to bottom. But I think a good place to start is with Abraham Kasongo, the 7-foot freshman. He's only 197 pounds. If he puts on weight, he will be scary.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And that 7-foot 197 build, I've said it before about Kasongo, reminds me, like, build-wise of, like, a Chet Holmgren, or, another story that people might not know is that back when Hakeem Olajuwon played for the Cougars and when he first arrived on campus, he was basically that same exact build, like 7 foot, I'm sure right around that 190 to 200 pound mark. But he built that muscle up, over time. And I think Kasongo, not comparing him to, Hakeem Olajuwon right off the bat. I just want to make that very clear. But build-wise, that's kind of who he reminds me of in somewhat similar circumstances.
There's two players on the wing for this Houston team that I really love, and that's Freddie Stonewall and Carl Holmes. I expect both to be first-round picks in the upcoming SWBA draft. I really like A.G. Fabenji. I think the Nigerian guard is very, very talented, and he's going to make a scary backcourt with Kola Abdul-Rauf, especially with both having size and the ability to be kind of three-level players on the offensive end.
Yeah, Fabenle and Abdul-Rauf, former SimWorld Africa teammates, and Kasongo with them as well. So I think when you look at Houston basketball, especially during Kelvin Sampson's tenure, they've always had that rough and tough, aggressive defensive identity. And
you got that down low with Derek Long.
Without question. But maybe what you could say they haven't had at times, in previous seasons is, depth on the offensive end. I think with this team, you finally have the best of both worlds, in a sense. So I think Houston not only has a legitimate chance to win the American Conference, I legitimately think they have a chance to win Hoopsteria.
Really?
I think Houston has a legitimate chance to win Hoopsteria.
I think they do too. And I'm going to tell you, this team is deep, this team is strong. They disappointed a season ago. They struggled in non-conference play, but I think they're ready and they're back with a chip on their shoulder. And I trust Kelvin Sampson to right the ship with this uber-talented roster and lead them to the American Championship. And potentially a deep run in Hoopsteria.
Yeah,
Final Four?
Absolute. I think Houston will definitely be in that conversation.
Moving on to another team that could have a potentially very high ceiling is Jackson State. They've had a great recruiting prowess in recent seasons. They brought in Renzo Bryant and Richard Alpine from SimWorld Prep. But they also have D. Woodley, Buddy Shackelford, and J.J. Ruff still with the squad right now. Are they real players in this conference?
I think Jackson State is good enough to make things chaotic in the American Conference. I think they have, a somewhat realistic chance of making it to Hoopsteria, depending on how, conference play kind of shapes out. But
absolutely,
one of the more underrated players in all of SimWorld Prep, the past season or two, was Richard Alpine, I felt. Quality big man for the AT Aliens, didn't put up crazy numbers, but he was a steady and consistent presence on the inside. So I think Mo Williams definitely has a chance to lead Jackson State, to make things interesting in the American Conference.
I definitely think I agree with that. I like D. Woodley. He's a little smaller at 5'11", but uber talented. J.J. Ruff, 5'8", great playmaker. My concern with this backcourt is that D. Woodley's 5'11", no set position. J.J. Ruff's 5'8". If they're facing a team like Houston with those bigger guards, how are they going to fare defensively?
I think that is definitely, that's definitely going to be a very interesting matchup whenever it takes place, and very interesting to, see how it plays out. But I think, I've said this before, and, I'll say it again here on the show today. I look at the originators, granted at SimWorld, different level, at SimWorld Prep, I'll give you that. But the principle of how they made it work, their guards may not have been the best perimeter defenders, may not have been the biggest guys, but when you have height and quality defense behind them, that can be enough to sort of make up for the shortcomings, and I think that could definitely be the case for Jackson State when you have Richard Alpine and guys like Clark Carballo and Roy Mason behind him.
I absolutely agree with that. I think that this team, I like Roy Mason. He's an athletic freak. I like Bo Shackelford. This team could have a very high ceiling and a very low floor. But on to the other team that started the season ranked in the SP rankings in this American Conference, the Memphis Tigers. They brought in a couple key pieces on the recruiting trail. They have a star in Darius Outlaw. He was great at Best Coast. He was fresh off a great season a season ago. KD Mack, 6'10", can do it all. Kenneth Klum, a knockdown shooter. They're second in the conference last season. Can they get over the hump, though?
I think this group is definitely one that could make a run, in Hoops area. And what I really like what Penny Hardaway, did with this incoming recruiting class, he went out and secured, each several different needs, and he went out and hit on each one of them. You need another backcourt mate that can play alongside LDO and also provide offense, be a knockdown shooter. You get that in Kenneth Klum. You need another, big man imposing presence on the inside. You go down and get Deontay Joyce out of Mississippi. You bring in Shiloh Lake to run the wing, a do-it-all guy who can defend multiple positions on the floor. Colton McCary, kind of a two-guard, off-ball wing kind of guy. Great shooter, can play defense, between the 1 and 3 like nobody's business. I think this Memphis team could make a Hoops area run.
I'm going to agree with that. I really like this Memphis team. I really like Kenneth Klum. He was great last season in SimWorld Prep. Deontay Joyce is another great pickup. Outlaw and Klum could be a really good backcourt. Joyce and Mack could be a really good front court. And I like Darian Banks as a slasher. Outlaw needed help last season. He finally gets it.
Yeah, he definitely finally has that help, and I think Memphis, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be, pushing Houston and Davidson for, conference supremacy at the top of, the American Conference.
You know what Penny Hardaway can do as a developmental coach, and I think this season we're going to see exactly what that is.
Yeah, definitely. He definitely has the type of group to where he can sort of show what he can do development-wise, with his coaching and, systematically and whatnot. But moving on to another Brainiac school, we've got Princeton, who I also think, along with Harvard, is going to be a seller team in the American Conference this season. I'm just being honest.
Next season, though, like Harvard, they could be really dangerous with a whole squad of freshmen and sophomores. Their only upperclassman is Cameron McKinney.
Yeah, and let me say, I really like Bruno John Misty's game. Kenneth Cozart, Neville Bow, and Youssef Othmani. But I think, like you said, it's more of a long-term sort of group, if that makes sense. The success is not going to hit right away. It's going to be a long-term, I think, project.
I like Alika Matson. I think that this team does have talent, but Mitch Henderson and crew are definitely going to need some time to kind of right the ship here for Princeton.
I will say this, though. I think Othmani and Matson they can use their size, Othmani being 6'10", 226, Matson being 6'10", 244. Arguably one of the biggest duos, in the conference. I think they can definitely make things interesting themselves, going up against some of the more teams in the conference with size disadvantages. When you look at like a Harvard or a Davidson, to be quite honest. I think their size can make things interesting, but I still just don't see them having a lot of success this season.
I think it's time to move on to Richmond. The Richmond Spiders. Chance Milton-Jones, 6'8". He's their star player. Him and Braylon Lash could be a really strong duo for this Richmond team. But what else do they really have going for them outside of that duo?
I think a lot of unknown with this group when I look at them. Chris Mooney only bringing in, McMichael, Platt, and EOL Singleton. The backcourt depth concerns me slightly with this team. They're loaded with depth on the wing, numbers-wise, but production-wise, there's just a lot of unknown. Richmond, I think they could be a middle-of-the-pack team in the American Conference, depending on how things play out, but it's definitely going to be, I think, the Chance Milton-Jones and Braylon Lash show, like you said, and that's where a lot of their success is going to be dependent on.
I think they can give teams a good fight in this conference. I don't think they're a contender. I don't think they're a seller team. I think they're kind of in that middle of the pack.
Middle of the pack, very much so, yeah.
And now we're on to SMU, the Mustangs, moving to the American Conference now, bringing in potential star freshman Cam Jones. What do you think Jones can do in his freshman season for SMU?
Well, SMU, they needed some offensive to bring in, some offensive punch and, production in this, recruiting cycle. They went and got that in Cam Jones. And, SMU, prior to his arrival, they didn't really have a guy who, really took the reins of the offense out on the court and could say was that number one go-to scoring option. So I think there's no reason Cam Jones can't step in right away and assert himself into that role.
Cam Jones is known for his shooting prowess. That's what he was known for during his Run DMV tenure. Same thing for his SimWorld U tenure at SMU. McCowan Duvall has been really impressive in off-season workouts. Torian Lane, another strong shooter. But I think we have to talk about Maury Washington. Maury Washington, 7 foot 263 now at true freshman. That's a guy where if you're facing Abraham Kasongo or any of these really big men in the conference, or even out of conference and playing a guy like Victoris Ilgauskas, Maury Washington can hold his own.
Yeah, I think Maury Washington definitely could hold his own. I really like the defensive potential there. I want to see a little bit more offensively from him. But like we've said before, that comes with experience, that comes with time and development. With that experience, I think we'll see that offensive ability sort of come out of him more so.
Reports have indicated from SMU camp that SMU is expected to be one of the best 3-point shooting teams in all of SimWorld U this upcoming season.
I can believe that. I can believe that. We haven't mentioned him yet, on the show, but Rodrigo Lima, undersized guard, 5'9", can really shoot and score the rock, and I think he is going to be a very nice, complement in the backcourt to a guy like Cam Jones. And they have a lot of backcourt depth. So I think the 3-point shot is going to be their bread and butter, definitely, on the offensive end.
We have just a few teams left in this conference. Let's move on to the Temple Owls. Picked up a couple of big recruiting wins on this season. A lot of seniors on this team, a lot of freshmen on this team, which means things can go both ways for the Owls this season. Bringing in Angelo Roman and AJ Frost, but then you also have Stellan Benz and Myron Farella.
Yeah, this is a very good-looking Temple team. They're good enough to, I think, really make things interesting in the American Conference.
I disagree with you. I think they're good enough to win the American.
Oh, okay.
Angelo Roman and AJ Frost had very small roles during their tenure at SimWorld Prep. They get big expanded roles as they head to SimWorld U now playing for Temple. But Myron Farella, he can kind of do it all at the point guard position, a very 3-level scorer. He's quick. And Benz is a stretch big sitting at 6'10". This Owls team really has everything you could want from it. There's experience, there's developmental pieces. And I really like Tyquan Fulmer-Jones as well. Jalen McDowell could be something. This team has their smallest player is 6'3". If there's one thing they have, it's size.
Yeah, they definitely have, more than their fair share of size on this team. I think what's keeping me from putting them, in that upper echelon tier of the American Conference, I say they're good enough to make things interesting, and I truly mean that. But what keeps me from putting them in that Davidson and Houston tier is Angelo Roman, and AJ Frost. Like you said, they didn't play really big offensive roles. AJ Frost, more of a defensive player. You know what he's going to bring to the floor. But Angelo Roman, can he step up and be, more of a high-volume scorer? Because with Lakeshore Drive, he had to sit behind, 2 Power 5 2 high major recruits in Norman Nations and Zay Gore. So I think that's why I'm a little hesitant on putting them in that upper echelon tier of the conference just yet, is to see how they'll kind of step in, and play their role.
Our last but finally not least team, we got the Wichita State Shockers. Can the Shockers shock the world in this American Conference?
I think they can definitely shock a lot of people. I've been high on him since his time with Beyond the Arch. Keontae McPherson. And my hot take, or my double down of the show today, is Keontae McPherson will be a first-team all-conference selection within the next 2 seasons. Within the next 2 seasons, Keontae McPherson will be first-team all-conference.
Okay. Some high praise from J.R. Storm, the Cowboy, rocking with the team very close to where he resides. But Deontay Mink and Keontae McPherson, very strong forward duo for the Shockers. Christian Harger, 6'1" sophomore, could expect to have a big jump in production as a sophomore. What stands out about this team is that nobody's below 6 feet, but the guard play is going to be a little bit suspect, especially on the defensive end, with so many guards that are on the smaller side.
Yeah, I think that could be one area that kind of, a lot of people are going to look at and, kind of maybe hesitate on pulling the trigger with, giving the green light on this Wichita State team. But I really think, to begin with, a lot more of their offense is going to be run through, that group of forwards and, like Shedrick Alderman and Khalid Ali. I think it's going to be more of a forward, big man-centric offense.
I like the forwards and I like the big men on this team, but reports are indicating the starting lineup is very much in flux for Wichita State, that only 3 starters are confirmed, and that 2 spots are still being battled out for.
Competition heating up down there, in Wichita, JK. What you think?
I think they could be competitive. I think they'll do what you said you think other teams in this conference can do, and is that they'll make it interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely where I'm at too. I think they can definitely make things interesting. Will they be world beaters this season? Maybe not, but I think next season for sure they can capitalize.
This is going to be quite the interesting conference, I'll say that much.
Yes, that it will. And everyone, that's going to do it for today's episode of the J-Rock Show. From me and my man JK, this has been another conference review. Coming up next week, we will have the preview of the Big Ten Conference. You don't want to miss out on that. Get in the comments down below. Get in the threads. Tell us what you think or who you're most looking forward to out of this American Conference. JK, thanks for being in the booth again, my man.
Appreciate anytime. Nice to be a regular on the show finally. However, I'm super excited to talk some Big Ten next week since I'm quite seasoned on Big Ten basketball. I think you all should like, subscribe, and smash the notification bell to watch more episodes of the J-Rock Show. We're going to keep giving you great content, so we hope you stick around.
Yes, sir. You heard the man. This has been J-Rock and JK. Thank you all for tuning in. And as always, see the game, be the game.